Wolfgang Van Halen was born into a name too loud to ignore. The son of guitar legend Eddie Van Halen and actress Valerie Bertinelli. From the moment he took his first steps, he was surrounded by music and fame. But while the world saw his father as a rock god, Wolfgang saw a dad who jammed in the garage and laughed at dinner. Eddie never pushed music on his son. He just left the instruments lying around and waited for inspiration to strike. At 9, Wolfgang picked up the drums on his own. By 10, Eddie gifted him a real drum kit. They started bonding through music. Wolfgang would hear a riff and try to match it on drums. It wasn't about lessons, it was a shared language. Soon he learned guitar, bass, and piano too, not to chase fame, but because music was how he understood the world. At 15, Wolfgang shocked the rock world by joining Van Halen, as bassist critics called it nepotism. But insiders knew better. He had spent years studying the band's sound-watching rehearsals and playing quietly in the background. On stage, he held his own, touring with his father, not as a boy with a famous name, but as a musician who belonged. In 2012, the band released A Different Kind of Truth, with Wolfgang laying down solid creative bass lines. For him, it wasn't about legacy, it was about sharing a dream with his dad. But behind the roaring crowds, his father was quietly battling cancer. Eddie played through pain, sharing every moment on and off stage with his son. Their bond grew stronger as time grew shorter. Eddie's health declined, but his passion never dimmed. Wolfgang became his anchor. And in those final years, the music meant more than ever. Wolfgang wasn't trying to take over the Van Halen brand. He was simply making memories. They traveled, rehearsed, and performed side by side until the end. In 2020, Eddie passed away. Wolfgang held his hand as he slipped away. It was the end of a chapter that defined his life, and the beginning of one filled with silence and grief. Instead of launching a tribute tour, Wolfgang stepped back. He refused to perform Van Halen songs, saying he only ever wanted to play them with his father. Without him, it didn't feel right. Instead, he created something new, a solo project called Mammoth WV, named after his father's pre-Van Halen band. Their first song, Distance, became a viral tribute, full of home videos showing a father and son laughing, living, and loving. The raw emotion behind the track earned Wolfgang a Grammy nomination. His debut album followed, filled with honest lyrics and tight rock compositions. Critics praised his independence. He wasn't riding coattails, he was walking his own path. Eddie's voice still guided him, encouraging him to be himself. Even as fans begged for Van Halen covers, Wolfgang stood firm. His tribute wasn't imitation. It was building something entirely his own. He said, "Just existing. And creating in my own space is enough of a tribute." For him, honoring Eddie meant doing what his father taught him, to follow his own voice and not live in anyone's shadow. Still, the burden of the Van Halen name is heavy, and Wolfgang has faced criticism and misunderstanding. But through all of it, he's leaned on family, especially his uncle, Alex Van Halen. A quiet supporter who shares the same grief and memories, Wolfgang has grown through it all. In 2023, he married Andrea Alop, and in a beautiful gesture, left an empty chair for Eddie at the wedding. Because while his father is gone, his presence never leaves. And through every note Wolfgang plays, every stage he steps on, Eddie Van Halen lives on, not through echoes of old solos, but through the music of a son who carries the love loss and lessons of a legend. This is Hollywood Star News. What's your favorite Eddie Van Halen memory? Share it in the comments, and if this story moved you, tap that like button, subscribe to the channel, and keep watching for more untold stories from the stars you thought you knew.